do visit our website. That's it. Good night.
To win the biggest games, you got to make the biggest moves. First you find the mark. A dishonest man makes the easiest catch, but you got to gain his confidence before you rope him in. And just when he thinks he's got something for nothing, you give him nothing for something. Oh, the money's nice, but it's all about the game.
Hustle, the con is on, tomorrow at 9 on BBC One.
And you're watching BBC One Northern Ireland.
Good evening. Later tonight on Let's Talk, we'll be debating whether or not Northern Ireland will ever be ready to forgive and forget. And you can have your say at home too. But first, the third and final edition of a special spotlight series looking at the aftermath of the face-to-face encounters hosted by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Some viewers may find part of the content upsetting.
Pain and all that we went through, I was able to give it all back to him, the way I felt.
I was nonplussed, you know, it was like a week in Castlereagh would have been easier.
I was lying with the white bar over my face, and I could hear a voice in the background going, dead, 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 dead.
For many of those touched by the Troubles, the very thought of sitting down with the killer is difficult to contemplate. But that's exactly what these two former paratroopers did. One survived the IRA bombing at Narrawater, but spoke to a former IRA man who'd shot dead a soldier. In an emotional encounter broadcast on BBC television earlier this week, a bereaved family faced loyalist killer Michael Stone.
Tonight, we take you behind the scenes of these dramatic encounters. Does anybody benefit from face-to-face meetings like the ones that happened here at Ballywalter House? The victims came to ask questions, seeking the truth. So is there a role for truth recovery when it comes to addressing the bigger question of how do you deal with Northern Ireland's legacy of violence?
No tattoo will cover up Michael Stone's past. Infamous for killing, he leads a life of self-imposed exile, fearing a reprisal attack at any time.
I hope that the Republican paramilitaries, i.e. gunmen, who come to do the job are as efficient as I was in the past. I've already made my funeral arrangements.
It appears part of those arrangements includes having this full body tattoo, which will take a year to complete.
The design is based on the death route of South Sea Islanders many hundreds of years ago, so maybe something to take me into the next world, so to speak.
Just how he's regarded in loyalist circles reflects the deep divisions in society, and he appears to like the virtual cult status he says he's acquired.
I sign autographs when I'm asked. You know, it's embarrassing at times, but from teenagers to the elderly, the middle-aged, tend to give me a Bible. Back in July, and there was a virtual queue around a bonfire with the telephones that take pictures, and they were lining up, and I was kissing babies and holding them, and it was all very presidential, and it's all very embarrassing too, but it's nice to be nice.
Nowadays, Michael Stone concentrates on his painting, which is gaining him a reputation outside Northern Ireland. But to people here, he will never be able to airbrush his past. He'll always be remembered for this. His kamikaze attack on mourners at an IRA funeral in Milltown Cemetery. 3 people died. As well as the graveyard murders, he was also convicted of killing 3 other men.
Long times I've seen these photographs.
Dermot or Dermy Hackett was shot dead in 1987. Since then, his widow Sylvia and brother Roddy have lived in fear of Michael Stone. To make matters worse, they've had to endure frequent reminders of the man who destroyed their lives.
I really had a thing about this real bravado of a man. When he first came out of prison, I said it was a bitter pill to swallow, but if I thought it would have brought peace, okay. But the next thing is he turns up on TV. He's paraded all over these big rallies as the saviour nearly of the whole cause. And I thought to myself, this is a man that people are praising for shooting innocent people, especially my brother.
So why would someone want to meet the killer of their loved one?
I've made that very to myself a long time ago, something I wanted to do. I said, right, I'm going to meet you one way or other, and I have to face you. And that was to make me feel better, and I just wanted to prove his innocence. He was a good man, done no harm to anybody, to be gunned down like that.
For the Hackett family, the fear they had of Michael Stone passed when they saw the man, not the myth.
The house we were in, it had a big hollow hallway, and I could hear this sort of tip-tapping. Actually, to this day, I still hear it. This tip-tapping coming up this hallway. And the next thing, of course, automatically my eyes turned towards this door, and in walked this man, done up in a black jacket and wearing a pair of and a walking stick. And a bit bent, and I come down and tooted down, sat down at the table, and I thought to myself, is this really the man that I sat a couple of years ago and said, this is going to be the saviour of Ulster, this is the hero, the great gunman? And I did actually feel a wee bit sorry for him. I really did. All I could say to myself was, a boy like you would look insignificant standing in a line in the post office, queued up for your DLA, you know. I mean, that's actually the way I looked at him.
It helped me a lot, because now Michael Stone doesn't scare me anymore, he doesn't bother me anymore. When I see him on the TV, I maybe broke down and cried and all that. Now he doesn't. And it has helped me, and it took a while out off me. Like it was lots been lifted off me by meeting them.
Dermot Hackett's daughter Sabrina was 10 years old when her father was murdered. At Ballywalter, she looked directly at Michael Stone, something he couldn't do in return.
I didn't have the balls to look at the young girl. She was out of my line of vision. I looked at the host of the programme, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Cardus. I couldn't look at the wee girl, you know, and how could you? She's only a nipper.
Michael Stone alleges Dermot Hackett was singled out because he was a member of the IRA, a claim always rejected by his family. Though convicted of the murder, he says he was not the gunman, but admits carrying out reconnaissance and studying files on Dermot Hackett.
Morally, I'm as responsible as the volunteers. They took his life, and they took his life because he was earmarked. They had intelligence on the man that he was an active member of PARA.
During the meeting, he was asked about the origin of the intelligence he claims he saw.
I would love to see these files, and I would love to see these bullets. Could I see them, or can I see them? Where are they?
They come, they go, and so, and I've got files of Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness.
Yes,
and that times, and they come, they
I'm
go.
a boy with Martin McGuinness now, and with the Derby's files.
But
Were you the last person that had them? When they gave you the file, were you the last person to have that file before Derby was shot?
I don't know.
Later, he gives his strongest hint yet that the files he says he saw came from the security forces.
The files I read, intelligence files, were provided by loyalist paramilitary intelligence officers. And it's just that, they're intelligence officers. They beg, borrow, steal from whatever source, perhaps, even official sources. I really don't know, but the intel was high grade. From movements to videotapes to large black and whites to, in some cases, aerial photographs. And to my knowledge, loyalist paramilitaries have never had an air corps, so you can take from that what you want.
At the end of the encounter, Roddy and Sylvia Hackett made a gesture that Michael Stone seemed unprepared for.
I'm really sorry.
Oh my God, let me go!
I don't know whether you went through. No, I could not have done that, I have to be honest. You're a better man than me, and Mrs. Hackett is a better person.
How are they better people than you are?
The Hacketts were better people. Mrs. Hackett and her brother-in-law. One, in that they came to meet someone who had possibly, they believe, taken the life of their loved one. And two, that they showed control that I could not have shown. If I was to come across someone 10 years from now and says, studio, and you sit and talk to Big Patty that killed a friend, or some mad dog killed another friend, you sit and have a yarn with him, I'd have him by the neck.
I think if the roads had been reversed in my case, and my brother had been sitting there instead of me, and I'd have been lying in a graveyard, I think my brother would have done it. Dermot, we have no doubt about that. Dermot, people that knew him would know that how forgiving Dermot was unbelievable.
Michael Stone remains a committed loyalist. He supports the Good Friday Agreement and says his war is over. These days he wants to concentrate on making a living from his artwork.
I more or less took it up in prison. Some guys with a red, with a trained, mad went in the cell and painted a bit, and escapism. You escape through your art. Make a comfortable living now, and especially in the mainland.
Well, a painting of that size, how much would a painting like that sell for?
That would actually sell for about £12,000. There's a couple of months' work in it, but more or less when you're in the mainland, you can double up. They're saying it's crazy prices to pay over there, but you put the work in it, and people like it, so they're willing to pay for what they like, basically.
I can't tell other people, how to earn their living or how to live. At the end of the day, it's blood money. The people who buy these things, it's up to them if they think, it's worth buying. They remember then, at the end of the day, who done it and why they done it.
Michael Stone says he was unable to carry on with his painting after meeting the Hacketts. And he says it caused him to do some soul-searching.
I didn't work for several days. I, in fact, took off for 3 weeks to Europe. I spent a year in solitary confinement and didn't feel that way after it. I don't think I slept for a few days. And looking over my past, my life, and sort of questioned myself, has your life been a lie? And then you thought about it. I was blanked for near 2 days. Didn't eat, didn't sleep, blanked for 2 days. Because it was an experience for me, and the jury's out whether I've got anything at all from it other than the few sleepless nights, the 48 hours of self-doubt in that who I was and my cause as a loyalist personally, but it soon passed, and I've reverted to kind. I don't pretend, I'm not a chameleon, I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I'm still Michael Stone.
During the encounter, the family accepted Michael Stone's truth that he didn't shoot Dermot Hackett, but he ignored their truth that Dermot Hackett wasn't in the IRA. The family still believe they did the right thing.
I got a tremendous feeling meeting the person, to set me up. Maybe didn't pull the trigger, but he still set him up to look him straight in the eye and let him know how we were feeling, how we felt, the pain and all that we went through. I was able to give it all back to him, the way I felt.
For a long time, I would say with me, I mean, what happened to my brother was like a cancer, which was left untreated, and over the years it grew and it grew. Okay, and as Michael Stone started to get a lot more popular in the press and all the rest, released from prison, I began to then start taking treatment for it and hoping that it would go away. And eventually I got the final treatment was when I met him.
Of all the encounters recorded at Ballywalter, the one involving Michael Stone was probably the most high profile. All of them were powerful and moving. Not least a meeting between a former IRA man who had killed a soldier and members of the parachute regiment who had been caught up in the massacre at Warren Point. For the ex-paras, it was the first time they had spoken to a former IRA man, and it wouldn't be the last. Joe Doherty shot a soldier in 1980. He met two former paratroopers and the widow and daughter of a soldier killed at Narrow-Water. Tom Khaki was badly injured in the explosions.
I was on fire. I looked around me, there was carnage everywhere. Couldn't hear anybody, couldn't see anybody. The day was really hot, there was a lovely sunny day. And I asked for something to cover my face. My face was stingy. I was lying with the white bar over my face, just lying there, basically waiting. And I could hear a voice in the background going, dead, 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 dead. And this voice was getting closer to me. And I was like, dead, dead. And it was above, it was at the back of my head. And I was like, dead. And I went, I'm not, I'm alive.
Joe Doherty is candid about how Republicans felt at the time.
I was in prison, and I'm sorry to say it, we all cheered. I mean, I'm not proud of that. You know, when you're looking back and it was your husband, it was your father, I mean, you probably discussed it to people, but we thought, what a great operation. I mean, this is really going to put the British government on a footing for peace.
Would you have participated in Narrow-Water?
Yes,
You would.
If I was in that unit, they told me there's an ambush tomorrow, someplace called Narrow-Water, I would have been sitting there with a plunger, and I don't make any apology from that. In relation to those days, I probably would have been involved in it.
Where you are now,
Different.
you are different. And I mean, when you look across and you see a daughter and you see
Yes.
and you see a wife, how do you feel about the choice you made of opting for violence? Are you remorseful, regretful of that?
No. I don't have any remorse, or even, I'm very concerned about this remorse, because it means guilt. It means that I was guilty of something. Regretting that, not just about the death of that soldier that was killed. I mean, I regret everything that happened.
At Narrow-Water, the Paras suffered their heaviest losses in a single day since the Second World War. This is the first time that Tom Khaki has watched footage of the aftermath. He suffered horrendous leg injuries. His fellow para and friend Graham Eve arrived immediately after the explosions. For both men, Narrow-Water has had a lasting impact.
It blew my life away. I was fit. I had ideas of where I wanted to go, how to get there. You know, I wanted to be a professional soldier. it was over the gap. You know, I came out of it alive. My biggest goal then was to walk again. They told me I'd never walk.
While Joe Doherty wasn't involved in Narrow Water, he spent 23 years in prison. He was a legend in the Republican community. He was part of an IRA unit that shot and killed SAS Captain Herbert Westmacott. After the killing, Joe Doherty was captured but escaped to the United States, where he was imprisoned while fighting extradition. It was there that he began to question the IRA's armed campaign.
Sitting in that prison cell reading the New York Times about this 62-year-old man who was a grandfather, I think, shot off the back of a truck, and I says, something has to change. You know, and that's when I came to believe that, you know, violence is the means to the end, but it's not the end. And the end is politics.
I didn't know those were from here. I think it was thrown on you. I thought you were.
Immediately after the encounter, the two former paras invited Joe Doherty to spend more time with them.
Look, it was a great pleasure actually to sit down and have lunch, and we talked about schooling and talked about the weather, we talked about rugby and different things like that. We were on the same level, which I think was important. 16, 17, come out when I was 46, and that's and you coming out.
Both the ex-paras felt the meeting was worthwhile. One even described it as a life-changing event.
I've sat down with Joe Doherty, something I never ever in my life thought I would do. I'm 45, most of my life I've grown up hating the IRA. My whole, even political perspective of things in Northern Ireland have changed. The simple fact I sat down at that table and talked to him on a human level.
I got peace out of it, as in, right, okay, Joe wasn't involved in my incident. Like many people were, you know. Listen to Joe's story that day. I don't understand why people join the IRA as such, you know, why they went to it. I'm not saying that's right. In fact, I disagree that they shouldn't have done it. But I can see why they went down that road. I feel good about it because they have realised what I knew all along. You know, killing people doesn't move you forward. You know.
After that first encounter, Joe Doherty invited the two former paras to his patch, the Republican New Lodge in Belfast, where soldiers were seldom a welcome sight.
Pleasure. Good to see you again. Welcome to where I live, born and raised. And this is the New Lodge Road, which is this is where I used to hang about when I was a kid. I'm just going to take you around and show you a few friends of mine who were actually, there's a mural about them up on the wall. 1973, there was a Saturday night. I don't know what happened. It was just one of those things where the army went crazy. It was a sniper fire from these flats here. These 6 lads were shot dead that night. Are you saying to me, right, time for truth, that these guys were walking up here in the British Army, just up and firing? Yeah, it was just one of those things that happened. I mean, it's unexplainable why it happened.
I can state now, like, no, categorically, being an ex-member of two para, that nobody that I ever soldiered with would have opened fire unless the circumstances were correct. You were afraid to open fire unless you had it correct.
It's not about sending anybody to prison. It's about the truth. Listen to what happened that night. We don't know. Why did it happen? Why did the army open fire?
I understand, Joe, with you living here and exactly your feelings in this, how you feel it's your friends, right?
Yeah.
This isn't political.
Yes, exactly. This is just a story.
I find no problem standing here talking to you now with your background. You have no from my background. But this is where it's, you know, closure. Closure has to be right now. That's it. Okay. Sad. And young lads lost their life. Young lads on our side lost their lives. How long do we keep pursuing history?
Yeah. I know within this community, I guess most people would probably support what I'm doing today. I'm sitting talking about British Army. Over the last few days, there has been individuals that came to me and saying, I think it's a step too far. Talking to people who occupied this area, and my argument was, but we need to come out of the ghetto. We need to open up debate. We need to open up dialogue. But I had it where I grew up.
While the threat may have lifted for some, others, like Michael Stone, feel they'll always be a target. Part of his everyday attire is a flak jacket.
I get regular warnings from the NIO. I'm supposed to be a target of opportunity for nationalist paramilitaries, you know, dissident Republicans, so to speak. But it's just common sense to stay safe, you know. I know you see you get a headshot, obviously, but as I said, if somebody gets that close to you, you know, you've maybe got a chance in a wrestle. The war's over, but basically my war is to survive, you know, and I basically wouldn't have it any other way.
He told us that day that he has no doubt that he is still a high-profile target. Whether he thinks, you know, that's impressing me, I don't know, but at the same time, I do feel for him. I mean, at the end of the day, what a way to live out the rest of your days. I mean, what did all these bombings and shootings and all the rest, what did it ever get him? I mean, so, okay, he got his name on the papers, he got his photographs all over the place, he might have got a reputation for a while. I don't even know if his own community even want him anymore. Hopefully. You know, I would like to see him, you know, end his days somewhere in peace. That's what it was all about. He's looking well now that he is.
The idea of using the truth to help heal the past is a difficult subject in Northern Ireland. Can face-to-face encounters help bring a sense of closure?
It has closed it, yes. But it'll never close until I find out who actually did shoot him. That's when I'll close it. And there may be at peace then. We'll be all at peace. And I probably met that person that I'm going to meet him too. If he came to my door and said, "Look, sir, I shot your husband," and I'll talk to him too.
I think that if people, by doing this, rather than sit at home and let it fester, I mean, we have to put closure on it somewhere.
There is no consensus on the way forward. Some may feel an apology is an important place to start. Others, even someone as badly injured as Tom Cackey, feels asking for apologies is pointless.
Love them or hate them, you know, they were committed activists and they believed in what they were doing. You know. I think it was wrong. They didn't, you know, they were good at your job. You know, and why should they apologise? You know, to be honest, apologies not going to bring my health back. They're not going to bring my friends back. It's happened.
Joe Doherty too found his face-to-face meeting worthwhile. But for Republicans like him, the state has a crucial role to play and must be held accountable in any truth process.
I was very interested to go and to open up the mind, and hopefully the second part of it is to kind of open up our hearts to have an understanding of victims, particularly victims of the conflict. I think all combatants and all people who were involved in the conflict have to do that. That is, as you have the loyalists on one side, you have the Republicans on the other, and the primary party, I believe, is the state. I think the British government had to come to terms with their responsibility, and they had to listen to the victims of the state as well.
All people killed in the Troubles in the New Lodge are remembered at this memorial. For these men, at least, one way forward is acknowledging that each other's past is at least worth listening to.
It's very, very fortunate. I mean, my name should be on that. Sometimes you think you escape sometimes. That's what Tom would say about himself too. Like, you know, yourself, Tom, you could have been somewhere. You were very, very fortunate that you actually survived that. It reminds me of where you see George Curzon Memorial Gardens. People have died, right? Dating from 1969, I think the last one there is 97. You know, you do difference except for the flag and everything. And it just brings home to me again. Everybody's lost. Nobody's a winner in this situation. Yeah. You know, looking at it, I'll pay that as much respect as I do for British soldiers, or you say, or for any death. What would make me happy looking at that? If that last name is the last name on it.
Exactly so.
Unfortunately, there's not a memorial to the victims in Narrow at one point, because if you lay a poppy area, it's destroyed. Well, that's because of the area it's in. Well, I'd like to thank you, Joe, for giving me anyway, and thank you. the opportunity to have a look.
Can I just say this has not been hard?
Yeah.
Now, if somebody asked me to do this 10 years ago, I had a gun in my pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I had been really,
Fear.
not fear, never been feared, didn't know it was, but detested.
Apprehensive.
Well, I would detest the IRA and what they've done and all the rest of it, you know, and I had a real hatred. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah.
But time's moved on. I realise now it's stupid, and I've enjoyed meeting you. I've got an awful lot out of it, and certainly, you know, if ever I can help or do in the future, certainly keep in contact.
This is a start, anyway. I believe this is a good start. Hopefully there's people saying if these people can have the courage to sit down and come into the past they had, losing comrades, losing friends, to stand here right in the middle of two former paratroopers, two former British soldiers, in the middle of a republic. I mean, this is an area which has 100% support for Sinn Féin, and to pay respect to be here. Maybe this is a guiding light for people to move forward. I personally wouldn't put my trust in the politicians. The people I put my trust into now is the people standing here that's seen it, done it, on both sides. It's up to us to move on, because we're the people who put the politicians there. And if they don't listen to us, if they won't talk out of them, don't put them there.
The face-to-face meetings that took place here at Ballywelter House give an insight into the depth of pain that exists after 35 years of violence. The real challenge is finding a way of dealing with it that everyone can live with.
And if you've been affected by any of the issues raised in tonight's Spotlight, an action line number will be given at the end of Let's Talk, which is next.
Spotlight concluding a special three-part series there. Tonight on Let's Talk, we're also devoting the programme to truth and reconciliation. How do we deal with our past without blighting our future? No more for that.
It's a good ball, the flag stays down.
Good evening. Since the first ceasefires more than a decade ago, the question of how we deal with the grief and injustice created by the Troubles has taken a back seat to the search for a political deal. But with no agreement in sight, the need to address the concerns of thousands of victims of the conflict is perhaps more pressing than ever. The challenge for the government and for us all is to find a way to discover the truth of what happened here without entrenching bitterness or opening up old wounds. Tonight, our Let's Talk audience is joined by the Chief Constable and the Interim Victims Commissioner. We also want to hear your views. You can phone, text and email your comments throughout the programme, and the details are appearing on screen now. But first, why the issue of facing the past is very much a present concern.
Last month's riot in Dublin was a reminder that dealing with the hurt borne by victims of the past conflict can itself prove bitterly contentious. But before the Troubles can be safely consigned to history, surely a way must be found to address their violent legacy. The government kick-started its search for a solution back in June 2004 when the then Secretary of State Paul Murphy visited South Africa.
We are charged to lay the ghost of that past so that they will not return to haunt us.
Mr. Murphy examined the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission set up in the 90s to deal with the legacy of apartheid. Victims of the conflict were given a forum to tell their stories, and the perpetrators were encouraged to come clean with the offer of an amnesty. So could this be a model for Northern Ireland? Other countries have taken different approaches, however. Chile and Argentina set up hearings to investigate past abuses by state forces with no amnesties on offer, a model that might appeal to Republicans but would have few takers amongst unionists here.
A year and a half on from Mr. Murphy's trip, the government's appetite for truth and reconciliation seems to have waned as the difficulties become apparent. In October, RUC widow Bertha McDougall's appointment as Interim Commissioner for Victims and Survivors sparked controversy and a High Court challenge. And in January, Mr. Hayne was forced into an embarrassing climb down over plans to introduce special tribunals to deal with killings by so-called on-the-run paramilitaries and also members of the security forces. Regardless of the political developments, the PSNI have pressed ahead with the creation of the Historical Inquiries Team, a 100-strong squad tasked with re-examining more than 3,000 killings during the Troubles. It's not clear if prosecutions and jail terms will follow. This week, the BBC has shown how one form of truth and reconciliation process might work here. Borrowing from the South African model, Facing the Truth showed victims face-to-face with the men who killed their loved ones.
Will you forgive me? Can you?
The programmes have proved controversial and raised questions about whether or not confronting the past can help or harm victims and survivors. The signs are that neither community is quite ready to forgive and forget. The challenge is to balance the desire for reconciliation with continuing demands for retribution. Well, as a reminder of how we got to where we are, there are, of course, many issues that we want to deal with in the programme tonight. We've got a number of questions from members of the audience to help us just move the debate along. And the first question tonight comes from Rita Hassan from Market Hill. Rita.
Does Northern Ireland need a formal truth and reconciliation process?
Rita, thank you. Does Northern Ireland need a formal truth and reconciliation process? Well, we have with us tonight in the audience the Interim Victims Commissioner, Bertha McDougall. Bertha McDougall, do you think we absolutely need a truth and reconciliation process?
I think, first of all, the programmes that we've watched over this last week very clearly demonstrate to us one form of truth and reconciliation. And for the people who were involved in that, the individuals and families, it was something that they had obviously considered very carefully, thought about, and were prepared to share it with everyone else. Now the other side of it would be, as we've heard in Stephen Nolan just this week, there are many people who would not be prepared to meet with the perpetrators either in private or in public. And that in many ways indicates to us the range of views, and those range of views are reflected from victims in Northern Ireland.
Yes, I mean that's a difficulty, I suppose, for you. It's the challenge for you, isn't it, that you've been given a job by the government of coming up with some kind of template, if you like, for moving this process forward. Do you have a sense at this stage as to what kind of model you think would be appropriate for Northern Ireland?
At the moment we're meeting with different groups and victims groups right across the community. We're also meeting with many individuals. Now we have not focused on this particular aspect, but nonetheless many people have indicated to us what they would consider might be useful, might be necessary, or what they do not want. We plan to focus in on this work in May and June, and I would just like to also reflect on the fact that this is only one aspect of the work. It's a very important aspect of the work, but equally I have to look at the needs of victims and survivors and individuals in this particular year. So if you like, there are many aspects and they all contribute to that.
Yes, and the point that has come through very clearly over the past 5 or 6 days is that victims have very different views of how they think they should be served by such a process. And some clearly feel that what took place on the BBC in recent days was very appropriate and very helpful for them. There were others who clearly felt that if they were given that opportunity, they wouldn't want to take it.
Yes. And what we also have to do is we're looking at other countries, what they have undertaken, and we will learn from that experience because this is Northern Ireland and we have to listen to the victims and survivors and reflect what are their needs. And you've rightly indicated people are going to look for different things. So we have to consider the role of the Victims and Survivors Forum and also to consider how many different ways of looking at need to be incorporated into that, because not one way will suit everyone.
Okay, well we have people who took part in that series of programmes on the BBC here who are going to contribute to our debate tonight. We have other people who've watched it and who, for their own reasons, find themselves involved in this particular issue. Just before I hear from them, I should make the point that we did ask the Northern Ireland office to send a ministerial representative along tonight. Now that request was declined. We were given a statement, though, which seemed to suggest that the NIO's position has changed. Paul Murphy thought that dealing with the past would help smooth the way to an overall deal. Now the NIO seems to be saying that it needs to wait until a political deal is struck. So there's a change there, and clearly there's not the impetus that perhaps there was before. Rita, can I just come to you? You asked the question. What are your thoughts at this stage of the debate?
No, I do not think that the victims in Northern Ireland are ready or do they want this South African process. I haven't met anyone through my group or through other groups that want it.
Nobody at all?
No one.
Right. Why do the people who you've spoken to take that view?
Well, one of the main views is they do not believe that they would always get a truthful answer from the perpetrators. They don't think that they could believe them. And again, they do not think that they could forgive in their heart someone that has killed their loved one.
And so there would be simply a blanket refusal to engage in any kind of truth and reconciliation process. Is that your view?
This particular one, yes.
The South African model that we saw
yes.
A sample of, if you like. I suppose there are other ways of approaching it. And as I said in the film there, the introductory film, different countries have adopted different models. You're simply saying that this model of perpetrators and victims facing each other across a table in the style of the South African experience wouldn't be attractive. But do you think nonetheless that the issues could be dealt with perhaps in a different way?
I'm not so sure that the people are ready for it to be dealt with. That I haven't met anyone yet who has said to me that they can draw a line under their past.
Well, we do have some victims in the audience tonight. Sylvia Hackett and Roddy Hackett took part in the Facing the Truth series. Sylvia, your husband Dermot was killed, and you met Michael Stone, who was involved in Dermot's murder, and you made it very clear in that programme and in the subsequent Spotlight programme, which followed up on that meeting, that you did feel as a victim that it was a worthwhile exercise and that the process needs to happen. Now, why do you differ from the views of Rita?
Well, Dermot's been dead 19 years, and on the 23rd of May, when are we going to get our chance? How long do we have to wait to get the chance to talk to the people who has destroyed lives? My life, my brother-in-law's life, my children's life. When are we going to... We got the chance, we took it. If we hadn't got that chance, when were we going to get the chance?
How were you helped, Sylvia, by sitting across the table by Michael Stone? It was clearly a very traumatic experience for you and for Roddy and for your daughter, who had to leave the room, who could not sit at the table for any length of time. So given the fact that it was so difficult, why did you find it a useful experience when it was over?
Because it's something that I've always wanted to do, to face Michael Stone. And now that I have faced him, I have no more fear. I'm glad that I've met him, and I'm glad he gave me some of the answers that I wanted. And I think it was very worthwhile.
See, Rita said she was concerned that victims taking part in a process like that might not get the truth. They might not get the respect that they deserve. They may not get the answers. You felt that you did get answers. Roddy?
Yes, I did.
Well, my thing was when he actually told us that he didn't pull the trigger on shooting my brother, he did admit he was involved in it. But yet, no. I mean, why did he quantify his answer by saying if he had been there, he would have done it? I mean, he wasn't going to go back to prison for saying he'd shot him, because he actually had been put in for that. He was let out. So I think, at the end of the day, okay, we went into that. I discussed it with my family before I went to that programme. I knew that there was going to be critics. I mean, there has to be. At the end of the day, we all have our own answers. We all have our own way of dealing with grief, dealing with things. But I think unless we get some type of forum, I have children growing up. I want my children to be living in a land of peace, not in a land of hatred. And guns and shouting. I mean, basically, take a look. Our politicians who are elected, spokespeople for us, we go to the ballot box, we elect them. What do? They can't even agree on setting up together to look at the bread and butter issues of this country. I'm living in a constituency that a hospital is about to be closed in, yet and all, we can't turn them, they have no teeth. We're getting told how to run our country from England. We are getting these people that know nothing about the Northern Ireland people in relation to the health, education. If we at least had something here that we could turn to and say, do something about it, we're going to have to. It's an issue at the end of the day. Okay, the South African one mightn't be the issue, mightn't be the way forward, but there's going to have to be something.
Can you understand, though, the reticence that exists in other quarters? And can you understand Rita saying the people I talk to wouldn't want to be a part of this process?
I appreciate, at the end of the day, I've been discussing outside in the green room before we come in here. I mean, I do appreciate that there are people, and I went into that programme knowing that I wasn't going to be a panacea for the cures of this country, but at least I'd done what I wanted to do. I applaud anybody that has anything else they want to do, whatever gives them solace.
Okay, I want to spread the debate a wee bit. Robert McLenaghan is in the back row there as a former Republican prisoner. What was your view on the process where perpetrator and victim were facing each other across the table? I mean, did you think it was a useful exercise, a model that could perhaps be expanded upon?
I think there's going to be a whole variety of ways of dealing with the past, ways of dealing with issues of truth. For those people that took part in the programmes, that was their individual decisions that accepted them. At the general point of a truth process or a truth recovery process, I think that there should be some sort of process that helps us deal with the causes of the conflict, that actually look what happened during the conflict and then how it affected different people, different organisations and different groups. The key to that is not to rake over the past, but in a sense to learn the lessons so that we never repeat the past again. And the only thing I would put in as a sort of caveat is that whatever the process is, that process then it has to be independent of all the combatants. In other words, there's Republicans who were involved in the conflict, there were loyalist organisations who were involved, but there was also British state involvement in the conflict. So any process would have to be sort of broader or wider. It couldn't be controlled if it isn't independent of the British government and the British state. I feel, from my community, I'm coming from a Republican or a nationalist perspective, that it wouldn't have any credibility.
Right, but do you think that a formula could be found where such a process would have credibility and that people who you know could go forward and tell the truth and could also hear the truth from other people who were parties to the conflict?
I think there could be ways of dealing with it, but there have to be that sort of basis of being independent, being international and being judicial. In other words, that almost being able to subpoena people to come forward and state what was their involvement instead of just leaving it up to an ad hoc basis.
Right, but including Republicans?
Oh, of course. Right. I mean, but where I'm coming from in terms of issues of state murder or collusion, we're talking about almost 1,500 killed directly by the Crown forces, the British forces, or through unionist surrogates.
Okay.
So how do you deal with those except by compelling the civil servants, the British ministers, and all to come forward and let their truth be told, in a sense.
Well, Sir Hugh Ord, the Chief Constable, is with us this evening. I just wonder how you respond to those thoughts. Could you foresee the circumstances where your officers or officers who served in the RUC were maybe not compelled, but were encouraged to come forward and tell about their part in the conflict of the past 30 years?
I think if you're going to have a process, then it has to apply across the piece. You cannot have a hierarchy of death, if you like. Everyone has to be involved and everyone has to engage. I think we need to get this into perspective. The vast majority of people killed during the Troubles were killed by the Provisional IRA or the UDA or the equivalent organisations on both sides. The state was in the middle, and I've spent 2.5 years of my life before this life investigating the killing of one particular individual, Pat Finucane, and allegations of collusion. But we need to be clear that this was not the major cause of death in Northern Ireland. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be looked at. I think there is no one size fits all. I think the points have been well made. We need to look at a number of ways of dealing with this, and it has to be focused on what the victims want to do. And that's very much where our historic inquiry team is focusing.
Right, okay. I'm happy to take comments from anybody in the audience at this stage. Yes. Well, Roy Garland just sitting alongside the Chief Constable, first of all.
Well, just from the very start, we're talking in terms of victims and perpetrators. And I have a feeling, that's what the programme has done. It's set this reconciliation and truth in the context of victims and perpetrators. But the problem with reconciliation is not about victims and perpetrators. It's about the people in this country who are caught up in a historical situation in which they don't know the enemy, the enemy being the other community or the others. They don't know them. The reconciliation has to take place between communities. Okay, this is part of it. But it's very important that ordinary unionists, ordinary nationalists understand each other and talk together. The other thing, a very important thing, is I think the television may have helped in raising the issue. It does not help ultimately, or at least there's doubts about how far it can help in people reaching peace with each other on that format. It should be private. There should be lots of opportunities. There's no reason why you need a television programme to come along and ask you to do it. It's happening all over the country.
Yeah. Although the South African model was televised. I mean, there is a theory, of course. There is a theory that if those meetings always take place in private, and if people don't meet the people who are from the other side, if you like, that they are simply talking to their own people and simply reconfirming their views of the past. They're not actually being challenged, and they're not hearing anything fresh. If you do it in private, the wider community, in fact, doesn't benefit from it.
Well, the issue's been raised, and there's lots of opportunities. I mean, if you're going for a South African model, and we're talking about the Republican, talking about a judicial process, and talking about the British government, what about the Irish government, their role? The Irish government and the British government will not talk honestly and frankly and in detail about what happened in earlier days. Neither will the IRA, neither will loyalists, neither will unionists, neither will nationalists. We will not get the truth in the sense that some people want it. We need more and more talking together, more and more contact, more and more politicians working together right across the community. But this television programme is actually misrepresenting the need, and it's distorting the need.
Right. Although, I mean, it's a small part of the broader process. I don't think anybody within the BBC said that this was a panacea that was going to solve 30-odd years of violence and 30-odd years of pain. But it's perhaps a step in our direction to get a debate going.
Well, I mean, it's depicting the problem again as perpetrators and victims. And that is making maybe ordinary people feel, it's not for me.
Okay.
It is for ordinary people.
All right. David Clements, the Reverend David Clements is just behind in the middle of the second row there.
Yes. I think the folks who took part in the Facing the Truth are very brave, and I commend them. But the whole structure of the program is unhelpful in that it's creating a juxtaposition of victims and perpetrators, and I don't think that's helpful. It's important for victims to tell their story, and if that's done publicly with the help of the media and so on, that may be a valuable thing. But to put a victim in front of a perpetrator and contrive it in such a way that you almost expect them at the end of the process to shake hands, I think is very unhelpful. And it may help the individuals, and I'm not saying that it won't have been helpful for Sylvia and her family, but there have been hundreds perhaps of other people who've watched that program and have said to themselves, I could never do that. And because they couldn't shake the hand of the perpetrator, they'll be put off from telling their own story in another safer forum.
Okay.
And it's been unhelpful in that regard.
Can I just come to Leslie Belinda, who's just at the end of the front row. Leslie, you were one of the facilitators in the program alongside Archbishop Tutu. How do you respond to the criticism there from David Clements and from Roy Garland that this threw up as many difficulties perhaps as it did solve issues?
I think maybe I'd like to say right from the start that Archbishop Tutu very clearly did not want to be seen as bringing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to Northern Ireland. He was quite clear that it was going to be different. He has no power to grant amnesty to anybody who's involved in it. It was primarily an opportunity for people to be able to tell their stories, to meet one another and to be heard. It was very much led by the participants, not by the facilitators. There was no sense of pressure in any way whatsoever of people to behave in a particular way, to shake hands or anything. It was very much left up to the individuals, and the individuals, the participants, led the process, not the facilitators.
Right. Okay. I want to get as many views from as many people as possible, but can I just get a quick show of hands? How many people in the audience tonight actually think that there is a need for some kind of process now to be begun, and that is something that they would be supportive of. So I think it's fair to say that that is certainly a majority. Do people want to just show their hands to the contrary, they don't think that there is a need for a process at the moment? Just a very small number. Gentlemen at the back. Okay. Can I just, Leslie, thank you for that in a moment. Gentleman alongside you, Jerry Armstrong, your brother was killed, and you've not, your family in fact, have not talked about that incident really publicly since it happened. What do you make about the whole process of trying to come to terms with the past in this kind of way?
Well, Mark, as you've said, our family has kept quiet for almost 32 years. My basic question is, will our family ever get to know the truth about the brutal murder of our brother Paul? I mean, almost 32 years ago, RUC detectives assured my late father James that they would leave no stone unturned in hunting the brutal killers from the UAF and hunting them down. Now where I'm sitting today, and my family is sitting today, how can we have any confidence in a serious crime review team when 32 years ago detectives assured my father that they would leave no stone unturned? As far as I and my family are concerned, there hasn't been too many stones unturned. And I have two letters here, Mr. Lord, that I received, two bits of correspondence that I've got from your office, one from yourself and one from a Mr. Brian Cox from the Historic Inquiries team. And will we ever get to know the truth? I mean, all we know is that our brother, 18 years of age, was taken away, a young Catholic, and he was brutally tortured, and then he had 4 bullets put in his head. And the reason behind it was they claimed it was retaliation for the Guildford bombings. I mean, my brother now would be with Guildford. They said my brother was in the wrong place at the wrong time. My brother was in the right place at the right time. The only thing wrong was his religion. He was a Catholic. And I'm asking you now, sitting here face to face, will you, as the head of the PSNI, do more investigating about the death of my brother and the detectives who swore to my father that they would leave no stone unturned?
So Hugh? Well, yes, and the whole reason for setting up that team was exactly to deal with these issues. And when I came here 3.5 years ago, I was staggered by the number of people that just wanted to know a lot more about the murders of their loved ones. And it was across the piece, be it across the divide. And so I was determined to do something, because the alternative is you do nothing. Now what we have set up is to do something, to reopen all those old cases and to look at where we can take them. Now we have to be realistic about this. A case that is 32 years old from an investigator's point of view is difficult to resolve. That's well established as a detective. You know that the older the case, the harder it is. That doesn't mean you don't try. And what we're doing is going to try. The 100 officers who we have appointed to do this particular job are going to try to fix as many of these problems as they possibly can. And it's operating, it's different to something, nothing's been tried like this before anywhere, to my knowledge, in the world. It's a huge undertaking. But the alternative is we just sit back and say, this is all too difficult. Now, we're starting at the older cases, so cases such as the one described will be one of the first ones to be looked at. And we will engage with the families, we will find out what it is the families want, and if we can't resolve it, or if we can't find the papers, or if the exhibits were destroyed in one of the many bombings of the Forensic Science Laboratory, for example, we will tell the families. We will tell the families what we thought of the first investigation. So the first one is how much was done in your investigation. We will tell you. We will tell you everything we possibly can about that case, if that's what you want to hear. Now, I cannot make any guarantees, but all I'm saying is we are doing whatever we can, our bit, if you like, the investigative bit of history, we will do our best to deal with. I think what you're hearing here, of course, is there are many other expectations which this won't fix, and this will not work for everybody. I accept that. But the alternative is we sit back and do nothing. So I think it's worth doing, and we will do our level best, is all I can say.
Jerry, does that reassure you at all?
Well, I don't know if that reassures me or not, but I mean, we were given reassurances 32 years ago. And as far as our family's concerned, detectives walked away then. And I know you're saying that after 32 years it makes it very hard for to investigate this. Maybe if them detectives had have been allowed to do their job, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't think they were allowed to do their job in them days. You know, my brother was killed simply because he was a Catholic. You know.
Well, as I said, I wasn't there in those days. What I'm saying is, having taken over, I was determined to do something, and this is an absolutely honest attempt to deliver some closure for some families in some of these cases.
Okay. Can I bring some other people? Here's in fact, you were going to ask a question on this very subject of the Historical Inquiries team. Do you think that a team of 100 officers, a budget of £30 million, can perhaps produce the kind of answers that some people so clearly want to hear after so many years?
With full due respect to what Sir Hugh has said, I think that this is really a window dressing exercise on the part of both the government and the police. I can't see there being any real outcomes from this historic crime investigation business. I don't think that they will get to the truth. I don't even think that the police are allowed to do their job. Because when you look at it, the word politics and the word police come from the very same root. And I think I know people from a different community from my own would allege that there is political policing in Northern Ireland. And the two questions that I have, Mark, are these with regard to this. Is it that our police force is incompetent, or is our police force not allowed by their political masters to do the job that they're appointed to do?
Well, I'll let Sir Hugh answer that directly, but what he seems to have said so far is that he is putting all the resources that are available to him into finding out as much information as he can. I mean, and he can't really say much more than that, obviously.
No, but the thing is, there will be nobody put into jail for having been caught or proved guilty of horrendous crimes.
And is that the bottom line as far as you're concerned? Your brother was killed. You want to see the people responsible for his death behind bars. Is that the point at which you can rest?
That certainly is one of the big things for me and for my family, and indeed for the people that I work with.
Right.
We want to see these guys put behind bars for as long as is necessary. The sad thing is that in our country, we decided that wouldn't be a good idea, and that we would let these guys back out onto the streets again to laugh in our faces, and to say, you can't do anything to me. They even laugh in the faces of the police.
And are you reconciled to the fact that the chances of the individuals who were responsible for your brother's death ever serving time in prison are pretty slim, in fact?
Well, I think one of the people I need to ask that question of is Bertie Ahern, because he and the Garda Síochána are protecting two of the guys who were responsible for the murder of my brother.
Okay, so do you just want to come in briefly at that? I mean, I paraphrased what I think you've already said on the subject, but is there any more reassurance or any more encouragement that you can give to Hazlett Lynch and the other many people who clearly would share his view?
Well, we don't do window dressing. I'm not interested in window dressing. I wasn't interested in going to government to get this new money to do something which is some cover-up, some facade. This is a genuine attempt, and people would judge us on what we do. But let's also be clear on another point. Not everyone wants to send people to jail. An awful lot of families I have met, families of people murdered during the Troubles, want to know what happened.
Yeah.
Now, if I can do
that is normally the purpose of a criminal investigation.
Yes, but they don't know. The difference is they've lived for 30 years, 20 years without knowing anything because they had very little contact with the service at the time. And we need to bear in mind the service at the time, the RUC, was dealing at the height of the Troubles with 500 murders a year. The height of the Troubles, the worst year, just under 500 murders. The Metropolitan Police could not cope with 500 murders a year. It had double the number of people here. So what we can do is more than was done before. I'm not saying it's the panacea, and certainly other things need to take place at the same time. And sadly, at the moment, we're doing our bit, but what I'm not seeing is the wider debate turning into some sort of positive action, so other people who don't like what we do or don't think it'll work will have access to other ways of dealing with their history and understanding the past.
Okay, but I mean, just in a sentence, is the bottom line that what you're saying to Hazlett Lynch is we may be able to give you some more information about the circumstances of your brother's murder, but in fact, Hazlett, we know that we will never bring the individual or individuals responsible to justice?
Well, I'm not commenting on individual cases. We will do our best to gather evidence. If there's a case, we'll send it to the Director of Public Prosecution.
Yeah, but they won't actually serve time in prison. That's the point.
Well, that's not a matter for the police. That's a matter for the judicial system. And the Belfast Agreement is clear. You would serve, if it was a pre-Belfast Agreement offence, you would serve no more than 2 years in custody. Now, that's not a matter for the police. We will do our bit, but I do think we've widened it to a a far more inventive way of looking at history than it's been done in the past.
Okay, I want to bring Michael Patterson in, who again featured in the Facing the Truth series just at the end of the second row there with a red tie. You were a serving RUC officer when you were very badly injured, and you took part in an encounter with an individual who wasn't responsible for visiting that upon you, that pain upon you, but who nonetheless did something very similar to other individuals. How did you find that process, and how do you find what you're hearing tonight in this studio?
Well, as a general comment, I hear people saying that the experience that I went through that was televised wouldn't be appropriate for many people, and I agree it wouldn't be, because they maybe aren't in the place and moving on where I was. If I'd been asked to do that 5 years ago, I wouldn't have done it, because 5 years ago I hadn't had the exposure to somebody who would have spoken openly. And I became involved actually with the Glencree Centre for Reconciliation, and whilst there I had the opportunity to meet people from loyalist backgrounds and Republican backgrounds, and I got to see them as individuals, they got to see me as an individual. And also with Glencree I went to South Africa and spent some time in the bush, sleeping on the ground, depending on somebody who'd been convicted for murder or attempted murder from a Republican background, and loyalists as well, to keep me alive at night and me to keep them alive at night too. So something happened there that changed my perspective, and when I was asked to do the programme, then I was willing to do it. But having said that, as I sat at the table waiting for this gentleman to come in who I'd never met before, and I was nervous, I didn't know who was going to come in or how he would feel towards me.
It was a difficult circumstance, but at the end of it, you said it was a worthwhile experience.
It certainly was, and I shook his hand. Now, something was edited out of the programme which I felt might have been better if it had been kept in. As I got up to shake his hand, I said, people who I would work with clinically, I'm a clinical psychologist, people who I would work with clinically might feel angry to see me shaking this man's hand. But I'm not shaking the hand of an IRA man. I'm shaking the hand of somebody who wants a better future for this country. And he said something similar in return about me being an RUC man.
And that's an important distinction for you?
Very much so.
Okay. Right, thank you very much indeed. Can I just get as many kind of fairly quick comments from individuals so that we can move on? But I know a lot of people do want to come in. Willie Fraser, first of all, you've had your hand up for quite a while.
Yeah, I see a problem with this whole concept of this peace and reconciliation. For a start off, I see it as an excuse to get away from justice. It is justice people want in this country. And whenever I watch that programme, I never once seen a Republican especially apologising for the hurt and pain that they brought onto the people of this country.
Okay.
We talked about, if I could just finish, they talked about people not coming to the doors. I had 5 out of my family killed. I never had a police officer come to my door once to tell me that it happened. And we were supposed to be part of the system. Now, justice is the system, and it's up to you, Ard, to deal with that, to enforce the rule of law, not to make excuses for it.
Okay. We're going to touch on some more of those issues, I think, a little bit later in the programme. Lady at the very back, at the end of the middle section there, yes.
Yes, I'm Loretta Gleeson, and I work with the Fernia Group, meaning Truth, in County Fermanagh. But listening to all this discussion and having watched Bishop Tutu's programmes, the 2 words that stood out was truth and reconciliation. And as far as I'm concerned, you could never have reconciliation unless you have truth. And the truth of what's happened here since 1922 is that the British government, and I honestly think somebody from the Northern Ireland office should have been here tonight, the British government set up a 6-county statelet with a 60% Protestant majority built into it.
Okay,
I have to get back
to it. No, it's okay. If you just make the point that's relevant to this discussion, because I don't want to get into big historical
I was born
analysis.
in 1938, I'm a victim. Because being a Catholic, I was reared here. Right. My first job I applied to was the civil service. I wasn't asked could I read or write or could I count. But I was asked, what is your religion? And needless to say, I didn't get that job. My father reared 8 of us. Not one of us got a job in Northern Ireland. simply because we're a Catholic.
Right. Well,
we could be sitting here in 50 years' time talking about killers and the IRA and the RUC and the
families suffered the same.
Unless the British government admit that what they had done in 1922 was the greatest act of terrorism was ever inflicted on
well, there will be clearly there will be some people who will agree with you. I suspect a lot of people might think that it's a slightly tangential point, but you've made it, and that's absolutely fine. There are other people who want to come in. Gentlemen, just immediately in front with a striped shirt, first of all,
Excuse me. Few words mentioned about the criminal justice system, as did Mr. Fraser. And the point I would like to make about the criminal justice system is it failed me, it failed my family, and it failed a lot of our community, the nationalist community in the North for years. Not just the criminal justice system, but the DPP's office. Mr. Ord's talking about the HET taking stuff to the DPP. The DPP's office failed me, as did the criminal justice system in relation to my father's murder. And I think we need to be looking at some sort of another process away from the criminal justice system altogether, and that's I would be in favour of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission of some kind. Maybe not necessarily what we had over the last few days, but definitely of some kind.
All right, thank you for that. Can I just actually take the next question, which will move us on, or move our debate on, I think, quite usefully. It's a question from Paul Kavanagh from Derry. Paul.
How do people define the term an innocent victim?
How do people define an innocent victim? Willie Fraser, you use this phrase a lot. Your group is Families Acting for Innocent Relatives. Can you define an innocent victim?
Somebody who is not involved in terrorism. Somebody who does not support terrorism. That is the problem. Republicans believe they have a monopoly over victimhood because they're a Republican. An example is what we're after hearing there about 1922. Well, I wasn't born in 1922. But people who believe they have the right to go out and kill have not got the same right as an innocent person or an innocent police officer or UDR man walking down the street with his wife or his mother or his child, and some low life comes up behind him and murders him.
Right. Joe Marley, just sitting alongside Rita Hassan there, you would take a different view. Your father was in the IRA and was killed. Do you think that there is a hierarchy of victims?
Well, I mean, I would like just to reiterate what Robert Sorletti says, and that almost 1,500 people that were killed during the conflict died as a direct result of state forces or state-sponsored forces.
Yeah, but how do you respond to when Willie Fraser says there is no, there are innocent victims, but by his definition, your father would not be an innocent victim?
Well, I mean, I think during the conflict, combatants, there is a clear distinction between combatants and somebody that's sort of been caught up in the thing. The thing I'd put back to Willie Fraser is this: when my father was murdered, my youngest boy was 2 weeks old. Now, that's a 2-week-old child that was robbed of ever getting to know his father. Is he not a victim? Because that's the reality.
Do you feel that you're a victim?
Certainly not.
Right. Do you feel that you are an innocent victim?
Of course.
No, because there are clearly people who would disagree with that. I just wonder how big an obstacle to the whole process you think that interpretation might be.
Well, I mean, that's people playing politics with it. I think anybody that died during the conflict is a victim, regardless. Whether it's combatant, non-combatant. And I would also, just to touch on this, I mean, I also believe that the state colluded with loyalists in the assassination of my father.
Right.
And I think groups like the HEP that was set up by the PSNI, I have no faith in, and I'm sure most nationalist Republican families, just one sec, would be of the same opinion, because what you're doing, the state is not going to expose themselves. And that's the reality.
Okay, Willie Fraser, just I need a sentence in reply, and then I'm going to come to Raymond Elliott, who's sitting alongside you. Is that 2-week-old baby who lost a relative in those circumstances an innocent victim or not?
Well, obviously a two-week-old baby cannot speak for herself. The question I would ask, does he now believe that his father was justified in the actions that he was whenever he was in the IRA? Does he support the action of what his father did?
Well, just give me an answer in a word or two.
Well, I mean, I'm not here to condemn the IRA.
There are
a lot of people who want to come in. Just get a straight answer and we'll move on.
Well, I'm not here to condemn the IRA or any individual actions IRA, but I think that was wrong done in all cases. That includes the RUC, the British, and loyalists.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, Raymond Elliott sitting alongside Willie Fraser.
Mark, as you know, I was a victim of the Shankill bombing. There's not a mark on me. What happened to me, as you know, I went inside, and what I seen inside was a slaughterhouse. So can Robert behind me here tell me would I be able to shake hands with Sean Kelly for a start? Am I not a victim? I'll show you 1 minute. I'm not 1 minute.
Well, very briefly.
That's the highest dose of tablets you can get. Right? And sleeping tablets.
And are you saying that everybody who's been caught up in the conflict over 30 years is a victim? Everybody, cast the net as widely as possible. Make no distinction.
No distinction whatsoever. But we turn around and say that Sean Kelly is a victim. Let Robert explain that to me, will you?
Well, Robert, just a quick word on that.
Okay. Well, my basic position, sir, would be that everyone who died as a result of the conflict is a victim. But I think you can make distinctions. I think the distinction can be made between those who made a conscious decision to get involved in the conflict as combatants. That includes Sean Kelly as RA volunteers, British soldiers, UVF, UDA.
Sean Kelly,
as opposed to
people,
civilians. As opposed to civilians.
Exactly. But there's people who were caught up. Maura McCabe was killed by a plastic bullet fired by a member of the RUC.
Okay.
But she was caught up in those circumstances. The people who died, the civilians who died in Shankill bomb, or Marie Wilson, who died in Enniskillen.
Robert, do you condemn that woman? Do you condemn that woman?
I do not condemn, or would never ever condemn the action.
Can I come back to the Victims Commissioner, Bertha McDougall here? There are some people who want to get in. I want to get as many people in as I can in the remaining 5 minutes or so of the programme. Bertha McDougall, how widely should the net be cast when trying to understand who is a victim and who is not a victim? Or should distinctions be made at all? Is it simply up to the individual to say, I am a victim, and therefore that person is a victim?
Well, I think very clearly tonight you have seen both the complete range of the spectrum of people's thinking. There is no clear understanding, no clear definition that is acceptable right across the community. There is no definition that is accepted by the political parties, and that is just how it is at the moment. What I do know is that part of the aspects that I have been asked to look at is to address needs, and I very clearly need to address the needs that are there within the system.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. There's a gentleman second in on the back row. He's had his hand up for quite a bit.
At the top of the show, you stated that there had been a retraction in the position from Paul Murphy and their readiness to engage in the truth and reconciliation or truth recovery process. I mean, and then it's interesting what Hugh Ord was saying about the historic inquiry team, that they would be impeded by actions such as the bomb on the forensics line. I mean, what we have seen is the PSNI previously, our independent investigations such as the Stevens inquiry, we've seen them deliberately impeded by mechanisms within the machine.
In a sense, we've heard that already.
But if that is the case, is the state prepared to accept its accountability? We'll have Robert's statements, we've had statements from Joseph, is the state ready to engage?
Thank you, we've had that point, and we did ask an NIO minister to come along, and as I said at the beginning, that offer was not taken up, so I certainly wouldn't wish to speak on behalf of anybody. Alan McBride, you're someone who would be well known to viewers at home, who was affected by the Shankill bombing, of course. What do you make of what you've heard so far?
I think I have one question to Robert, if I could ask it. When people in this society refuse to condemn things which are so blatantly wrong, I have a huge problem with that, I'll be honest with you. And my big concern, Mark, about a Truth Commission, and I'm actually a person who's probably in favour of that because I think it's something that we need to do to actually acknowledge the hurts and the wrongs that were inflicted on all sides. But when I hear something which is so blatantly wrong and someone in this audience who refuses to condemn it, something that was so obviously wrong, 9 innocent people murdered, I would be the first person to admit on my side when people went out and murdered whoever it was and it was wrong. Death, murder, killing is wrong, and I don't care what the cause was, and I find it very hard to sit here and to hear someone say that he refuses to condemn that action. I understand the politics of it and all the rest of it, and I actually also understand the fact that if Sean Kelly lived in another part of the UK, he probably would have been involved in the IRA. I understand that. I have no problem with that. But sometimes people in this society just have to stand up and say that things were wrong, because they were wrong.
Yeah.
Robert, briefly, if you would.
Yes, I would just respond to the question. Would I condemn the actions of the IRA? As a former member of the IRA, the very simple answer is no.
Even the Shankill bomb?
But listen to me. What I'm saying is, I would not, on a public programme, condemn the actions of the individual incidents that the IRA involved in. But directly to yourself, Mr. McBride, I would accept, and I would say here tonight, that there were incidents, actions carried out by the RA, which were terrible, which were wrong, and were indefensible. But that is not just a question for the RA.
No.
The British Army, the RUC, the UDR,
I accept that, but you have to say, first of all, everybody that committed wrong in this country needs to stand up and say that it was wrong. I have no problem with that, but you need to say it.
I have already said it, so I can understand where you're coming from, and I can state categorically that the RA did carry out actions which were terrible, which were wrong.
And that includes the Shankill bomb in which Alan lost his wife and father-in-law.
So, I mean, but don't be coming to me and saying it's just an RA problem that we have to deal with. Right. We have to deal with the British government and its wrongdoing, the UDR wrongdoings and all the rest.
Okay, I want to bring just a few people in very briefly for a few quick final comments. John Ray, just sitting alongside Hazel Lynch.
I think the Truth and Reconciliation Programme were very interesting from the point of view that the victims went in scared and the perpetrators were confident. They seem to show the strength and no signs of remorse at all for what they've done.
And that concerns you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman at the back on the middle there, who's had his hand up really for a very long time.
I find it fascinating that once again we're going back into history again. That once again we're working over the same old things, that we can't understand that the past is the past. I feel for the victims here tonight. I work with victims groups and I understand the pain that's there. But it's a pain we have to put to rest. We can't even agree here tonight what truth is or what reconciliation is. We can't even agree what victims are. So what chance are we going to have for a peace and reconciliation forum? It's 20 years away. We have to learn to live together first before we can sit down and agree what happened over the past 20, 50 or 1,000 years.
Okay, it's a huge issue and we really have just scratched the surface of it this evening and we've run out of time. I want to thank all of you for coming along tonight. That is it from this edition of Let's Talk. We will be back with the next programme in April. If you'd like tickets to be in the audience for future programmes, our number is on the screen now. Don't forget about our website. It's bbc.co.uk/Northern Ireland/Let's Talk. You can keep the debate going there until next month. Thanks to everyone in the studio audience for taking part. Thanks to you at home for watching. From everyone in the Let's Talk team, good night. Bye-bye.
And if you've been affected by any of the issues in tonight's programme and would like to talk to someone in confidence for further information and support, please call the BBC Action Line on 08000 565 450. That's 08000 565 450. Lines may be busy, so please remember the Action Line's open 7 days a week from 7:30 a.m. until midnight, and all calls are free and confidential.
Make things better the easy way with BBC I. Just press red before most CFAX numbers. It's available anytime and it's free.
Well, why does the Commonwealth matter? Ahead of the Games, Jason Donovan explains. This week is here on BBC One Northern Ireland after Hearts and Minds.